The Valari had been running for 17 cycles. Their ship, the Eternal Grace, moved slowly through the cold darkness of space. It was not a warship. It was never meant for battle. The Valari were a peaceful people. They were artists and teachers and healers. They built beautiful things and sang songs that could make even the coldest heart feel warm. But none of that mattered to the Dominion. The Dominion was an empire that stretched across 100 star systems. They believed that they were the greatest species in the galaxy. They believed that all other life existed only to serve them or to die. When they came to the Valari homeworld, they did not come to trade or to talk. They came to destroy. The Valari remembered that day. The sky had turned red with fire. The cities that had stood for 10,000 years burned in a single afternoon. Millions died in the first hour. Millions more died in the days that followed. The Valari fleet, small and poorly armed, tried to fight back. They were destroyed in minutes. Only the Eternal Grace escaped. 12,000 survivors. That was all that remained of a civilization that had once numbered in the billions. Now, 17 cycles later, the survivors were dying. Elder Mira stood at the viewport of the bridge. She was old, even by Valari standards. Her pale blue skin had turned gray with age and exhaustion. Her 4 eyes, which had once been bright with curiosity, were now dim with sorrow. She had been a teacher before the war. She had taught young Valari about the wonders of the universe, about the beauty of distant stars and the mysteries of ancient civilizations. She never imagined she would spend her final years watching her people starve. The ship was falling apart. The life support system struggled to keep the air breathable. The food supplies had run out months ago, and now they survived on emergency rations that tasted like dust and sadness. The engines made terrible sounds every time they tried to move faster than a crawl, and now the Dominion had found them again. Navigator Tolek looked up from his console. He was young, barely an adult by Valari standards, but the war had aged him beyond his years. His hands shook as he delivered the news. 6 warships, he said. His voice was empty, like a man who had already accepted death. They will reach us in 14 hours. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. They had run so far. They had sacrificed so much. And in the end, it had all been for nothing. Elder Mira closed her eyes. She thought of the children in the lower decks. 342 of them. The last generation of Valari. They would never grow up. They would never fall in love or have children of their own. They would die in the cold darkness of space, hunted like animals by an empire that saw them as nothing more than prey. "We should prepare the evacuation pods," someone suggested. "To go where?" Mira replied. "There is nowhere left." In the back of the bridge, a young female named Hana sat at the communications console. She was 20 cycles old. Her mother had been the ship's communications officer before her, but she had died 2 cycles ago while repairing a broken relay during a storm of radiation. Hana had taken her place, not because she was qualified, but because there was no one else. For 17 cycles, Hana had sent distress signals into the void. She had called out to the consortium, a loose alliance of trading species who claimed to believe in peace. They never answered. She had called out to the free traders, independent merchants who traveled the space lanes looking for profit. They never answered either. She had called out to anyone and everyone who might listen. The universe remained silent. But Hana was stubborn. It was a trait she had inherited from her mother. Even now, with death only 14 hours away, she could not bring herself to give up completely. She turned back to her console and began to type. The message was simple: their coordinates, their situation, a plea for help. She sent it into the endless dark, knowing that no one would hear it, knowing that no one would come. Around her, the crew began to prepare for the end. Some of them went to the lower decks to be with their families. Others stayed at their posts, determined to die with dignity. A few gathered in the small chapel at the center of the ship, praying to gods who seemed to have abandoned them. Elder Mira remained at the viewport. She watched the stars, those distant points of light that had once filled her with wonder. Now they seemed cold and cruel, like the eyes of a universe that did not care whether the Valari lived or died. Somewhere in the lower decks, a child was crying. The sound echoed through the empty corridors of the ship, mixing with the groans of failing machinery and the whisper of recycled air. It was the sound of despair. The sound of a people who had lost everything. 14 hours. That was all the time they had left. Hana stared at her console, watching the signals she had sent disappear into the void. She did not expect an answer. She had stopped expecting answers a long time ago. But she had sent the message anyway. Because hope, even false hope, was better than nothing at all. The eternal grace drifted on through the darkness, carrying its cargo of broken dreams and dying souls. Behind them, somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, 6 Dominion warships were closing in for the kill. And in the endless dark ahead, something was listening. The United Earth Navy battleship Indomitable was on patrol at the edge of known space. It was boring work. Lieutenant Yuna had been staring at her console for 6 hours, watching the same empty readings scroll across her screen. Nothing ever happened out here. The Hollow, as the human explorers called this region, was a vast stretch of nothing. No planets, no stations, no other ships, just stars and silence. Yuna was 26 years old. She had joined the Navy because she wanted adventure. She wanted to explore strange new worlds and meet alien species. Instead, she spent her days running diagnostics and drinking too much coffee. She was about to take a break when something caught her attention. A signal. Very faint. Coming from deep within the hollow. Yuna sat up straight and adjusted her instruments. The signal was weak, barely above the background noise of the universe. But it was definitely there. And it was definitely not natural. "Sir," she said, turning to Commander Taiho, "I am picking up something strange." Taiho was a tall man with tired eyes and a permanent frown. He had been in the Navy for 15 years, and he had seen enough strange things to know that strange usually meant trouble. He walked over to Yuna's station and looked at her readings. "Where is it coming from?" 17 light-years away, deep in the hollow." Yuna ran the signal through the translation software. "It is a distress beacon, not human. The computer is having trouble with the language, but I am getting some words. Refugees, pursued, please." Taiho's frown deepened. 17 light-years was a long way. Even at maximum speed, it would take them hours to get there. And the hollow was uncharted territory. They had no idea what they might find. "Keep working on that translation," he said. "I will wake the captain." Captain Jisoo was asleep in her quarters when the call came. She was a woman in her early 50s, with gray streaks in her black hair and a face that showed the marks of a long career. She had commanded the Indomitable for 7 years, and in that time, she had earned the respect and loyalty of every person on board. She was on the bridge in 5 minutes. Yuna played the signal for her. The voice was alien, musical, and strange, but the words were clear enough. A ship full of refugees, 12,000 civilians, 6 enemy warships closing in, less than 14 hours until they were destroyed. The bridge was silent as the message ended. Executive Officer Minho spoke first. He was a careful man, the kind of officer who always thought 3 steps ahead. It was his job to point out the risks that others might miss. "We do not know these people," he said. "We do not know who is chasing them. This could be a trap." "It could be," Captain Jisoo agreed. "If we go, we will be entering unknown space. No backup, no support. If something goes wrong, we will be on our own." "That is true," And if those 6 ships are as powerful as their signatures suggest, we will be outgunned. Captain Jesu nodded slowly. Everything Minho said was correct. Going after this signal was risky. It was dangerous. It was probably foolish. But she had not joined the Navy to make safe choices. "Play the signal again," she said. "Full audio." The voice filled the bridge once more. It was a female voice, Yuna realized. A young female, maybe not much older than herself. And beneath the alien sounds, beneath the strange harmonies that human throats could never produce, there was something painfully familiar. Fear, desperation, hope. "We are the last of our people," the voice said. "We ask for nothing but a chance to live. If anyone can hear us, please. Our children are dying. We have nowhere left to go." The message ended. The bridge remained silent. Captain Jesu stood up from her chair. She looked around at her crew, at the men and women who had followed her to the edge of known space. She saw doubt in some of their faces, fear in others, but she also saw something else, something that made her proud to be their commander. She saw hope. "Navigation," she said. "Plot a course for the signal. Engineering, I want everything this ship has. Push the engines past their limits if you have to." "Captain," Minho began. "I heard you." "Commander, log your objection if you want." She turned to face the view screen, where the stars of the hollow glittered like distant diamonds. "Humanity spent 10,000 years looking at the stars and wondering if we were alone. We found the answer. The galaxy is full of life, and some of that life is cruel. But we also learned something about ourselves out here. We learned who we want to be." She sat back down in her command chair. "All hands, battle stations. We are going in." The Indomitable turned toward the hollow. Its engines roared to life, pushing the great ship faster than it had ever gone before. Behind them, the safe and familiar stars of human space grew small and distant. Ahead of them, somewhere in the endless dark, 12,000 souls were waiting to die. The humans were coming to change that. The Valari had stopped counting the hours. What was the point? They all knew what was coming. The Dominion warships were close now, close enough that the Eternal Grace could see them on their damaged sensors. 6 shapes of death, moving slowly through the void like predators who knew their prey had nowhere to run. Elder Mira had ordered all the civilians to the inner compartments of the ship. It would not save them. Nothing would save them. But at least they would not have to watch the end coming. On the bridge, only a handful of crew remained. Navigator Tolek sat at his station with his hand on the self-destruct controls. The Valari had agreed long ago that they would never allow themselves to be captured. The Dominion did terrible things to their prisoners. Death was better. Hana remained at her communications console. She did not know why. The console showed nothing but static. No one had answered her signal. No one was coming. And then the static changed. Hana leaned forward, her 4 eyes widening. There was something in the noise, a pattern, a signal. "I am receiving something," she said, her voice cracking. "Another transmission. It is not Dominion." Before anyone could respond, space itself seemed to tear open. The flash of light was so bright that it overwhelmed every sensor on the Eternal Grace. For a moment, Hana thought the Dominion had started their attack, but when the interference cleared, she saw something that made her heart stop. A ship had appeared between the Eternal Grace and the Dominion fleet. It was not like any ship Hana had ever seen. Dominion vessels were beautiful in a cruel way, all smooth curves and elegant lines. This ship was the opposite. It was brutal, angular, covered in armor plates and weapons that jutted out from its hull like the spines of some angry beast. It was painted in dark gray and gold, and on its side was a symbol that none of the Valari recognized. A blue circle with patches of green and brown. A planet. Their planet. "What is that?" Tolek whispered. Elder Mira stared at the strange ship. It was smaller than the Dominion warships. Much smaller, one vessel against 6. The odds were impossible. And yet somehow she felt something she had not felt in 17 cycles. Hope. "The unknown vessel is sending a message," Hana reported, "to us and to the Dominion." "Let us hear it," Mira said. The voice that filled the bridge was female, calm, strong, and completely unafraid. "Attention Dominion Fleet. This is Captain Jisoo of the United Earth Navy battleship Indomitable. The vessel behind me and its people are now under our protection. You will turn off your weapons and leave this area immediately. This is your only warning." Silence followed. The Valari crew looked at each other in confusion. United Earth? Humans? They had never heard of such a species. Where had they come from? Why were they here? The Dominion response came a moment later. The voice was harsh and cruel, full of contempt. "We do not know your species. We do not recognize your authority. You are one ship. We are 6. The Valari are prey. You will move aside or share their fate." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Jisoo smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a wolf that had just been threatened by sheep. "Dominion Fleet," she said, "I am going to give you some advice. My species has a saying, 'Do not start what you cannot finish.' You started this. Now you are going to see how humans finish things." She cut the transmission. Around her, the bridge crew prepared for battle. Weapons Officer Daesom powered up the main guns. Lieutenant Yuna tracked the enemy positions. Commander Taiho coordinated the targeting solutions. Every person moved with calm efficiency, like parts of a single well-oiled machine. "They are not moving," Yuna reported. "I think they do not believe we will actually fight." "Then let us teach them," Captain Jisoo said. "All batteries fire." The Indomitable erupted with violence. Railguns launched metal projectiles at speeds that defied understanding. Missiles burst from their pods and raced toward the enemy ships. Plasma beams, bright as small suns, cut through the darkness like swords of fire. The lead Dominion warship never saw it coming. 3 railgun rounds punched through its shields, through its armor, and out the other side. The ship shuddered and began to drift, bleeding atmosphere and fire. On the Eternal Grace, the Valari watched in stunned disbelief. "By the ancestors," Tolek breathed, "who are these beings?" Elder Mira had no answer. She could only watch as the single human ship charged directly at 6 Dominion warships, guns blazing, engines roaring, utterly without fear. The Dominion fired back. Their weapons were powerful, designed to destroy capital ships with ease. Beams of energy lanced toward the Indomitable, torpedoes spiraled through the void. But the human ship did not slow down. Its point defense systems filled the space around it with a wall of fire, destroying torpedoes before they could hit. Its armor absorbed the beam weapons, glowing red-hot but refusing to break. And still it kept firing. A second Dominion ship exploded, then a third. The formation broke apart as the remaining vessels tried to escape the human onslaught. Hana watched, tears streaming down her face. For 17 cycles, she had believed that no one would come, that the universe did not care about the Valari, that they would die alone and forgotten in the endless dark. She had been wrong. Someone had heard them. Someone had come, and that someone was very, very angry. The Valari had seen war before. They had watched the Dominion destroy their homeworld. They had seen their fleet burn in the sky like falling stars. They knew, with the certainty of the defeated, that the Dominion could not be beaten. The Dominion was too powerful, too advanced, too cruel. What they saw now changed everything they believed. The human battleship moved through the Dominion formation like a predator among prey. It did not dodge, it did not hide. It charged straight at the enemy, taking hits that should have destroyed it, and kept firing. On the bridge of the Indomitable, alarms were screaming. Damage reports scrolled across every screen. The ship had been hit multiple times. There were fires in the lower decks. The forward armor was nearly gone. 3 crew members were dead, and a dozen more were wounded. But Captain Jisoo did not retreat. "Target the 4th ship," she ordered. Her voice was calm, almost casual, as if she were discussing the weather. "It is trying to run." Weapons Officer Daesam nodded and adjusted his targeting. The main railguns turned toward the fleeing Dominion vessel. For a moment, the enemy ship seemed to hang in space, frozen between hope and doom. Then the guns fired. The railgun rounds traveled at a fraction of light speed. The Dominion ship's shields flashed once, twice, and then collapsed. The rounds continued through, punching holes in the hull, destroying systems, killing crew. The ship went dark and began to spin helplessly through the void. "4th target disabled," Daesam reported. 2 remaining. The last 2 Dominion ships had stopped running. They turned to face the Indomitable, their weapons charging for a final desperate attack. They were badly damaged, but together they still had enough firepower to destroy the human ship. Commander Taiho studied the tactical display. His mind worked quickly, analyzing angles and distances, looking for an advantage. "They are overlapping their shields," he said suddenly. "They think it makes them stronger. But look here. Where the shields meet, there is a weak point. If we hit it just right—" "Do it," Captain Jisoo said. The Indomitable adjusted its position. The main plasma cannon, the most powerful weapon on the ship, began to charge. Energy built up in the weapon, glowing brighter and brighter until it was almost too bright to look at. The Dominion ships fired everything they had. Beams and missiles and torpedoes, all aimed at the human vessel. The Indomitable shook under the assault. More alarms, more damage. The lights flickered and died, replaced by the red glow of emergency power. But the ship held. "Plasma cannon ready," Daesam announced. "Fire," Captain Jisoo said. A beam of pure energy, bright as a star, shot across the void. It struck the exact point where the 2 Dominion shields overlapped. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shields began to collapse inward, feeding on each other, creating a chain reaction that neither ship could stop. Both Dominion vessels exploded at the same time. The light was so bright that it temporarily blinded every sensor in the region. When it faded, there was nothing left but debris and dust. The battle was over. It had lasted 11 minutes. On the Eternal Grace, the Valari crew stood in stunned silence. Their sensors showed the wreckage of 6 Dominion warships, the most feared killing machines in the galaxy, destroyed by a single vessel from a species they had never heard of. Elder Mira was the first to speak. "This is not possible," she whispered. "This cannot be real." But it was real. The proof was floating all around them. The Dominion, the invincible Dominion, had been defeated. On the Indomitable, the crew was dealing with the aftermath. Medical teams rushed to help the wounded. Engineers worked to contain the fires and repair the most critical systems. The ship was badly hurt, but it was still alive. Captain Jisoo sat in her command chair, her face streaked with sweat and smoke. Her uniform was torn, and there was a piece of metal sticking out of her leg. She had refused treatment until her crew was taken care of first. Lieutenant Yuna approached her with a report. "Captain, the refugee ship is hailing us." Jisoo nodded. "Put it through." Elder Mira's face appeared on the view screen. Her 4 eyes were wide with emotion that humans could not fully understand. When she spoke, her voice trembled. "I do not know how to thank you. I do not even know what to say. We thought we were going to die. We had accepted it. And then you came. Out of nowhere. Out of the endless dark. You saved us." Captain Jisoo smiled, a tired but warm smile. "That is what we do. But why? You do not know us. We have nothing to offer you. We are strangers." Jisoo thought about the question for a moment. It was a good question. Why had they come? Why had they risked everything for people they had never met? The answer, when she found it, was simple. "Because you asked for help," she said, "and we heard you. That is all the reason we need." Mira stared at her. In all her long life, she had never met a species like this. A species that would fight and die for strangers. A species that saw the cruelty of the universe and chose to be kind anyway. "Who are you?" she asked. "What are you?" Captain Jisu's smile widened. "We are humans," she said, "and we are here to help." The days after the battle were busy ones. Shuttles flew back and forth between the Indomitable and the Eternal Grace, carrying supplies, medicine, and food. Human engineers worked alongside Valari technicians to repair the damaged refugee ship. Human doctors treated Valari patients, learning quickly how to work with alien biology. It was difficult. Communication was hard. There were misunderstandings and mistakes, but somehow, they made it work. Elder Mira stood in the hangar bay of the Indomitable, watching crates of supplies being loaded onto a shuttle. More food than the Valari had seen in cycles. Clean water, medicine for the sick, blankets for the children. It seemed like a dream. Captain Jisu walked over to her. The human captain was limping slightly. The doctors had finally forced her to let them treat the wound in her leg, but she had refused to rest. There was too much work to do. "Elder Mira," she said, offering a small bow. "How are your people?" Mira's 4 eyes blinked in the Valari gesture of deep emotion. "They are alive, because of you. I still cannot believe it." "Believe it. You are safe now." "Safe!" Mira tasted the word like something strange and foreign. I had forgotten what that word meant. They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the busy activity of the hangar. Humans and Valari working side by side. 2 species that had never met before, brought together by chance and desperation and something else. Something harder to name. "I have a question," Mira said finally. "It has been troubling me since the battle." "Ask." "In the galaxy, I know mercy is weakness. Helping strangers is foolishness. The strong take what they want, and the weak suffer what they must. Every species I have ever encountered follows this rule. The Dominion, the Consortium, the Free Traders, everyone." She turned to look at Jisu. "But your people are different. You risked your ship. You risked your lives. For people you never met. People who could offer you nothing. Why?" Jisu was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but strong. "My species spent most of its history at war with itself. We fought over land, over resources, over ideas. We came very close to destroying ourselves more than once. We have been cruel and selfish and blind. We know exactly what darkness looks like because we lived in it for a very long time." She turned to face Mira. "But we also learned something. We learned that the only thing that ever saved us was each other. When there were floods, we built boats for our neighbors. When there were plagues, we made medicine for strangers. When there were wars, we eventually found ways to make peace. And when we finally reached the stars, we made a promise to ourselves." "What promise?" "That we would not become the thing we spent so long fighting against. That we would be better than our worst moments. That when we heard someone calling for help in the darkness, we would answer." Mira was silent. Tears formed in her 4 eyes, though she tried to hide them. "You speak of kindness as if it is strength," she said. "As if it is something to be proud of." "It is strength," Jisu replied. "The greatest strength there is. Anyone can be cruel. Anyone can be selfish. It takes real courage to be kind when the universe gives you every reason not to be." Behind them, a commotion broke out near one of the shuttles. Mira turned to look and saw something that made her heart's ache. It was the children. A group of Valari children had gathered around a young human crewman named Suho. He was showing them a magic trick, making a small ball appear and disappear in his hands. The children were laughing, actually laughing. Hana was there too, translating as best she could, her own face bright with a smile that had been missing for cycles. Laughter. Mira had almost forgotten what it sounded like. "What happens now?" she asked. "The Dominion will not forget this. They will come for you the way they came for us." Jisoo shrugged. "Let them come. Humanity has faced worse odds and survived, and you will not face them alone. Not anymore." "What do you mean?" "We have colony worlds, space stations, places where your people can live and rebuild. It will not be easy. Starting over never is. But you will have a chance, a real chance." Mira reached out and took Jisoo's hand in the Valari gesture of eternal gratitude. Her four-fingered hand was cool against the human's warm skin. "We do not deserve such kindness," she said. "That is the thing about kindness," Jisoo replied. "Nobody deserves it. That is what makes it matter." 3 months later, the Eternal Grace entered orbit around a green and beautiful world called New Busan. It was a human colony, far from Earth, but growing fast. The humans had cleared land and built shelters. They had prepared fields for farming and schools for children. They had made a place for the Valari to call home. Elder Mira stood at the viewport as the first shuttles began to descend to the surface. She watched her people step onto solid ground for the first time in 17 cycles. She watched them breathe real air and feel real sunlight on their skin. She watched them weep with joy. The galaxy was still cruel. The Dominion was still out there. There would be more battles, more struggles, more dark days ahead. But the Valari were no longer alone. And across the stars, word was spreading. Other refugees, other hunted peoples, other forgotten souls had heard the story of what happened in the Hollow. They heard about the human ship that appeared out of nowhere to save strangers. They heard about the species that asked for nothing in return. Hope was spreading through the galaxy like light through darkness. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and they were just getting started.